2 years ago, I have found doing something that many of us are doing every day. Exactly this. After 15 years of intensive work in a corporate business and shutting down my computer every night, it was the first time I was shutting down my career for good. I bought the round-the-world ticket and left to travel for a year. It was a two-folded journey for me, inside within myself and outside in the world I wanted to discover. When you make such an insane move, insane, at least in the people around you, quitting a successful banking job on its peak, you've got to think well, and I mean it. I've been thinking about it for many years, and I'm sure you've heard about the midlife crisis. It's when you get an expensive car, a lover, or both, but the crisis of 30s is different. It's not about achieving enough, but rather it's about this question of self-actualization. What I am to this world. Am I realizing my potential? Am I doing my best? I got concerned about changing career also because I couldn't find that the organizations I've been working for truly corresponded to my sense of meaningful impact. And of course, I was worried about how to do that. But then I thought, wait a minute. I may not and could not be the only person in the world who did this. So I decided to empirically test this idea that changing your career after 30 years old in a meaningful way, finding your true calling, is possible and can be successful. So I decided to take this question to travel with me to 30 countries around the world, to interview at least 30 people who did that successfully or not, and I called this project 30 Up. In the next 15 minutes, I might save a year of your life, the year which I spent traveling, because I'll tell you what I and other people think about, let's call it the journey of 30s. And this is the journey that you might not want to miss, even if it requires shifting some major perception. So let's start with shifting perceptions about traveling. Traveling with intention brings another paradigm to your experience. It's easy. Let's say you're a foodie. Make a culinary trip. You're into birds? Go birds watching. Are you into people, like I was? Travel alone. Traveling alone is liberating. It's actually changing that pattern of neediness, of that fear of being alone. And trust me, when you travel alone, you meet a lot more people. Not just somebody, but really a lot more. Also, because you don't need to stick to your companion, but rather explore the human landscape. You start falling in love with that freedom of moving around, going places which you always wanted to see. The Easter Islands, the Patagonia, the glaciers, the waterfalls in Brazil, the vineyards of Cape Cod, and bustling streets of Mumbai. The inside journey for me, however, started in my home country, in Kazakhstan, with the interview of my close friend, Sasha Lee. In the first 10 years of his professional life, Sasha made a remarkable career in general management and finance, and everything looked like a success. A great job, solid pay, status car. But one day he actually asked himself how much he was actually enjoying and how much his work looked like the work of his dreams. As a true financier, he decided to literally clock down every task he was performing during the day and rate it on a 100% happiness scale. He was doing so for a month. The results astonished him. Only 5% of his working time he was actually enjoying what he was doing. As a check, he decided to imagine himself at the point A, where he was, saying, okay, maybe I understand that I'm happy about it 40%, but what about point B, where I can happen to be over a lifetime? He said, okay, it might be that I have an understanding and happiness, satisfaction about it for 20%. So if you multiply 20% by 40%, we did the math, trust us, mathematically, he would have only 8% of a life success rate. Haven't realized that. He also realized that he doesn't want to spend the rest of his life with such low chances. He decided to totally recompass his career. And now, 7 years passed, he's enjoying the new journey to the point B with a career in business consulting and life coaching. Even though back then he was already 30 years old with a new baby born and a lot of uncertainties. And I was one of his first clients. He was the first person I could openly talk about my questions and concerns of life meaning without being ridiculed. Yes, actually ridiculed even now. Recently, I was speaking at a big corporate event about this journey, this search, big answers, quitting corporate job. And suddenly I noticed a group of people sitting somewhere at the back of the conference room who were literally pointing fingers at me and laughing out loud. Honestly, I was shocked. It was the first time in my life I was laughed at publicly. Obviously, what I did was unimaginable for them, so unimaginable that I looked insane. And you know what? I think I could understand them, because changing your life, even a little bit, is very difficult, especially if you already have a responsibility, a family to support, a mortgage to pay, and you struggled all your life just to make it, to look successful, to have that house. Does it sound familiar? And if it does, like it did to me some time ago, doesn't it also mean that the last century definitions of success hold no longer true? That we struggle to be good children by meeting expectations of our parents, but we, the 30-ups, actually might reconsider the norms set over. Speaking of expectations, I would like to travel with you on to New York City, where I met Young Basi, very talented singer and performer, who until late 20s was denying her talents by pursuing a medical degree. She said to be even ashamed of her voice, letting it out occasionally at the shower times, because her Black immigrant parents made it very clear. You cannot be serious about being a singer. It will not make you a living. So she was studying and working part-time as an administrative employee at the Carnegie Hall, as close as she could get to the performance world, until one day she learns that Moby, a famous European DJ, is making an audition looking for a lead singer for his US tour. After some trepidation and nervousness, she decided to take a chance. She passed it, and she ran away with the circus. And the way she describes her experience is this. She said, "It was baptism by fire. Everyone on the tour was a pro, and then there was me, who's never been on tour. I barely had any performing experience. But luckily to me, Moby was such a generous artist. He saw in me something that I couldn't see in myself. He gestured me over stage, and from that point on, I was like an animal unleashed, running, squatting, performing with such wholeheartedness. And you know what? If it hadn't been for Moby, I might not be singing right now, because I didn't know how strong that calling was. I know I could sing, but I didn't know that my voice could make people cry. I didn't know that I had so much within me to offer. But when you start to honor your desires, your wishes, your dreams, everything starts to flow." These days, Sinyan dedicates full time to her singing and performing works. But after interviewing her, I actually wondered, how many of us have that issue when we cannot recognize our own talent? How many of us do not see ourselves the way other people see us? Well, I believe that everyone has a talent. I think we just have to look back into our childhood and remember the things we enjoy doing most without noticing time passing by. Like I, for example, always been good with organizing things around, and as a kid I would make a street library, giving out books, most of which never returned. Or at the age of 6, I would make a culinary class, which resulted in a light poisoning. Anyway, I still like having people do fun things together. That's why I'm a TEDx organizer. But my point is that maybe you're already doing something that is your talent, but just for a wrong cause. To illustrate that, I would like to travel you on to Mexico. In a tiny, tiny city of San Cristobal de las Cascas, I found Claudia Muñoz Morales. Having abandoned her flashy career in the fashion business, she moved to Chiapas, where she started a social enterprise, still in fashion, but glorifying the beauty and work of indigenous people. She says this: "I got to the point when I was 33 years old, to the peak of my life. Bought an amazing apartment, had the best clothes, went to best places, had the most handsome boyfriends, jobs, and I wasn't satisfied. Because everything was something that the society tells you is perfect, and it's a lie." Today, Claudia works with a group of 16 women of Chamu, one of the indigenous communities of Chiapas. Together, they have combined Claudia's knowledge for design and fashion business with the heritage and skill of traditional weaving, turning it into amazing pieces of clothes and accessories. Claudia says, I don't want charity from compassionate bias. I want people to buy because it's a beautiful piece and because there is a connection that is happening between a group of women and you. I'm not innovating design with my brand, but I'm shifting the perspective from what people treated. Shifting perceptions is the new trend setting, she says. It was the idea Claudia came up with, how to build a brand without victimizing, but building up pride and dignity and self-esteem for those women. And the idea is just a nutshell of a huge work with the community. But actually, when I was talking to Claudia, I was pondering myself with a question. How does it feel for a powerful urban woman like her change the lifestyle so drastically? But she puts it very clearly. She says, now I'm happy. Now I'm satisfied with what I do. And I definitely enjoy my lifestyle more. Not just, I left Mexico City not because I didn't like it. I even tried coming back twice, but I couldn't. I became an uncomfortable friend who talks about real world and social injustice. For many years, she says, I was hating my country for the wrong choices my government makes. But with my previous job, I was part of the problem. Now I'm part of the solution. And this is my way of showing contribution to the change. I loved Claudia so much and her story. And I was publishing these interviews online, and a lot of people were following me and writing to me personally, sharing their own stories, but mostly asking for advice and encouragement, which means they also felt the vibe. They were seeking the change, and simply put, happiness. But here's the thing. Happiness and meaningfulness are not exactly the same options. Like meaningfulness is more deeply tied to a valued sense of self, to a purpose in the context of life and community. In other words, meaningfulness is like a big umbrella of your lifespan, or a red line going from point A to point B, connecting the dots of happy moments. In other words, exactly these questions of meaning you face in your meaningful age of 30. And for us, many TEDx organizers, this life of meaning we found in spreading great ideas, which are in turn connected to a greater sense of humanity. And during my trip, I couldn't miss meeting some of the fellows. Such in Cape Town, I interviewed Justin Beswick, one amazing personality. Having organized TEDx on the marine biodiversity, which is endangered on the Eastern African coast, he got so concerned and inspired that he teamed up with one of the speakers, and they set up a marine discovery expedition. They called it Moving Sushi, for collecting deep water ultrasound data of rare species. During the trip, the ship was hacked by pirates, but it didn't stop them. They returned, fundraised again, and completed the tour. The data received went open source online for all marine biologists around the world. And this is just one of the Justin's initiatives. Like the other one, helped solving two very acute problems of Cape Town, litter and homeless people employment. Such Justin pays people on the street to collect garbage. I was inspired by Justin's example and his initiative, so I said, how do you come around with your social business ideas? And he says, well, since childhood again. It's been always part of the family's agenda, so I'm just doing what feels is right. Stories like Justin, Claudia, and many others people I interviewed inspired me. But still, I have that question. So how to take that leap of faith? How to move from an abstract idea of changing life to actually making the first step? For that, I'd like to go to Tokyo. In Tokyo, I met Megumi Hagiuda, a beautiful soul, who at the age of 29 quit her job in a big pharma because during one of her volunteer trips to Kenya, she discovered a small community cultivating unique roses. She wanted to help them, so she set up a business selling directly these flowers to Japan, and now this business helps sustaining back that community. I asked Megumi, do you actually remember that moment when you realized that urge for change? And she said, yes. I remember myself asking one day, if I die tomorrow, would I be satisfied with my life? And I knew I could contribute more. Because if you're not comfortable enough here, you don't get any chance. You have to commit. And there's no sacrifice about it. It's just the commitment to being true self. Megumi helped me to understand that the journey I was taking just wandering was in fact the opportunity to commit, to see how serious I was about the change. And now I truly believe that the 30s is not the new 40s, but it's, again, the opportunity to come back to your dreams and aspirations which you had when you were a teenager, to start owning back that inner freedom of doing things that you always wanted to do, even if it requires starting over again, to clearly see what your life can be like for the next years to come. It's time to shift the perception of how success should look like. And let's be brave by doing that. Let's be the new role models, especially for our children. Let's be brave by facing the challenges our own communities, the world, the humanity puts in front of us. And my call today is not for dropping out of school or doing rash decisions, but rather giving yourself justice in realizing your true potential. By this, giving justice to this world. And a simple question, a test, could be this. Every night, when shutting down your computer, just ask yourself this very question. What I am to this world? Am I doing my best? And maybe your own journey will begin. Thank you.